Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Thanks so much for joining with us. We've got a very special show today because Mike Huckabee, President-elect Trump's choice for ambassador to Israel, is with us. Former Governor Huckabee has a long record as a staunch defender of the Jewish state.
Israel is winning more victories in its war on Hamas and Hezbollah. The IDF eliminated another top Hezbollah leader in Lebanon, while more Hamas terrorists are surrendering in Gaza. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
In waves of attacks, Israel is systematically destroying Hezbollah sites in Beirut and other Lebanese cities. The IDF says Hezbollah spent years building weapons manufacturing facilities in civilian neighborhoods. Before the attacks, the IDF sends evacuation orders to prevent civilian casualties. Over the weekend, Hezbollah spokesman Mohammed Afif was eliminated. Afif served as a key leader in Hezbollah's military operations and propaganda machine. On the ground, IDF soldiers fight on two fronts, throughout southern Lebanon and in the Gaza Strip. In Gaza, more Hamas terrorists have been surrendering, a sign of how much the Iranian-backed terror group is being defeated. As for the war in Lebanon, media reports say there may be a ceasefire, but both the IDF and the terror group Hezbollah seem determined to keep on fighting.
If this organization continues to fire, we will continue to fight, to implement plans, to go further, conduct deep strikes, and hit Hezbollah very hard.
While the fighting goes on, observers note President Trump's election could have a profound impact on Israel's wars and the entire Middle East. Many consider the first Trump administration the most pro-Israel in American history. He acknowledged Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moved the American embassy there. He also agreed Israel should possess the strategic Golan Heights, and his White House pushed for the Abraham Accords, forging alliances between the Jewish state and former Muslim foes. Trump, in his second term, faces many challenges in the Middle East, but also opportunities, including adding more nations to the Abraham Accords. One of the thorniest problems is dealing with Iran, which supports proxy wars against Israel and is threatening to retaliate with more missiles after Israel's attack on October 26. Soon, the Islamic regime may be armed with nuclear-tipped missiles, which it's threatened to use on Israel. They could also target the U.S., which the mullahs label the Great Satan. There's also much talk now of Israel annexing Judea and Samaria and the end of a dream of the Palestinian state.
I think it's impossible to speak about two-state solution because it will never happen. You cannot draw a line that can divide and separate the population.
Regardless of President Trump's views on Judea and Samaria, his pick of former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee for U.S. ambassador to Israel is seen as a positive move. Huckabee, who first came to Israel more than 40 years ago, says he's passionate about this calling. He says weighty measures like annexing Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, should be up to Israelis themselves. Huckabee doesn't think a two-state solution is practical, and he believes Judea and Samaria is the promised land of the Jewish people. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, Governor Mike Huckabee joins us now from Little Rock. And Governor, when I got the news that you were being selected by Trump, there was a shout of joy. What was your reaction to being offered the position as ambassador?
Well, Gordon, I was a little shocked. I was not expecting the call. President Trump called me last Tuesday, and frankly, it was not on my dance card that day. So it was quite the surprise, but also an extraordinary honor to be asked to do this. And having been to Israel 100 times plus over the past almost 52 years now, it's just really an opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm grateful that the president has bestowed this confidence. I hope I get confirmed by the Senate, and with Republicans in charge, maybe that'll happen. But I look forward to going to work for my country, my president, and for the people of America, and to be an able representative to my friends in the Jewish state of Israel.
Well, I trust you'll sail through the Senate with flying colors. I can't imagine any serious objection, but you never know what the other side's going to try to do. I know your personal views on Israel. How are you going to balance that? You're representing the people. You're certainly serving at the pleasure of the president. So how are you going to balance?
Well, Gordon, as you know, an ambassador doesn't get to go and always formulate his own opinions. You are the emissary of the president. I'm very mindful of the fact that there was only one person elected to lead American policy on November the 5th, and that was Donald J. Trump. So it will be his policy, not mine, that we will implement. But if the past is any sort of prelude to the future, it bodes very well for an excellent relationship with Israel. Look at what Donald Trump got done. The Abraham Accords were historic. He should have been given the Nobel Peace Prize for that. It truly was an incredible breakthrough to bring alliances with Israel and former enemies of Israel. In trade, diplomatic relationships, tourism, everyone benefited. He also put maximum pressure against Iran. That took their money away. That's why there was no October 7th during his administration. But when the Biden administration released the pressure, they had money again. What did they do with it? They funded Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and a lot of innocent people, civilians, were murdered and massacred as a result. So if we look back at what Donald Trump did, recognizing the Golan Heights, moving the embassy, opening up whole new relationships in the Middle East, recognizing Jerusalem as the eternal and rightful capital of the Jewish people, you take a look at all those things together, and I have a feeling that there is, in fact I know because I'm hearing from many of my Israeli friends, an extraordinary sense of optimism, hope, and quite frankly, relief that President Trump will be back in office.
I assume you're planning to hit the ground running, and I've got to bring up UNRWA. The Biden administration, it just amazed me. In the first week in office, he restored funding for the UN Relief Works Agency. Many of their employees were involved in October 7th. Can we hope that that will finally go away? Will the U.S. move not just to stop our funding, but will it move to eliminate UNRWA from the UN?
Gordon, I certainly hope so. I look at the team that the president has put together for foreign policy, Marco Rubio at State, Elise Stefanik as UN ambassador, and what I see are people who recognize that the UN is a hopeless organization. I don't get to make the decision, but if it were up to me, we'd jackhammer the whole thing off, float it into the East River, and invite anyone who would like to have it to come get the thing and take it with them, because it's become a disgrace. And what our policy will be is not my decision to make. I would just tell you that it is an organization that has continually looked the other way at horrific human rights abuses, and then even put some of these bad actor states in charge of human rights. It's absurd, insane, and unfortunately, it's also been very hostile to Israel, which makes no sense whatsoever, since Israel is the only true democracy in all of the Middle East and the most free, liberated nation there is. So there ought to be an appreciation for what the people of Israel have done for their citizens, and even for those who don't like them. But I'm not sure we'll ever see that at the UN.
Well, what are we going to see on the ground? Former Ambassador David Friedman, who has strongly endorsed you as ambassador, has put out a book, One Jewish State, calling for the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, to be now included in Israel's territory and essentially establish Jewish sovereignty, Israeli sovereignty over the entire territory. Is that even possible? I interviewed him and I said, you've thrown a bomb into American foreign policy. Is that a dream to hope for?
Well, David Friedman is a very close friend, and he's been so supportive since this announcement. I think he could have gone back had he wanted to. So I feel blessed to be able to follow someone of his stature and expertise. I do agree. His book is, frankly, a real blueprint. Now, whether it will be the policy, I don't know. But I personally, again, I want to make clear, personal level. I'm not speaking for the administration that will be upcoming, not speaking for President Trump. But this idea of a two-state solution has always been nonsensical to me. You can't have two people claiming the same piece of real estate, and one of those two parties doesn't believe the other one should even exist. That is not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for confusion, disaster, and absolute mayhem. So we've got to quit talking about it. And Republicans have been just as guilty as Democrats over the years, Gordon, as you know, trying to pretend that this was a real solution. It's not a solution. And everything that has been put on the table, everything has been soundly rejected by the Palestinian Authority and by all of those who claim to be part of it. So for anyone to say, well, why doesn't Israel do X? I tell you why. Because when they do propose anything, it's every single time rejected. And one thing we need to put a bigger focus on that the Biden administration has failed in, let's talk about those Americans who are still being held hostage. Maybe 7 Americans still hostage in Gaza, held by Hamas. That should never have taken this long, over 400 days, and that's inexcusable.
Well, I'm going to ask you to speak from your heart. You're talking to evangelical Christians. It's certainly not lost on me the importance of you as an evangelical Christian for the past, my near-term memory, it's always been a member of the Jewish community from America being appointed as ambassador to Israel. You as an evangelical Christian, how can Christians pray for you? How can Christians pray for Israel? And what do you view as the significance of your appointment?
It is significant. To my knowledge, I'm the first evangelical to ever hold this post, if it happens, and I trust it will. But it's a bigger statement, I think, that the president is saying that evangelical Christians in America strongly support Israel. And we do, as you well know. And I think it's important that as really a group of people who understand how important Israel is, not just to a relationship with the United States, but to peace in the world. My prayer, and the prayer I ask others to pray for me, is that God will use me in that role to bring relationships, to bring new posts of freedom, new relationships among other Muslim-led nations, to expand the Abraham Accords, and ultimately, the simple prayer, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
I've got to ask, because people are asking me, what's going to happen to your television show?
Well, I don't think I can continue.
There is a studio in Jerusalem. You could use that.
Yeah, there is, Gordon, but I have a feeling that the federal requirements of being an ambassador would preclude me from also hosting a television show on a network. But I wish I could, because it's been one of the great joys of my life. And it's hard for me to believe I've been doing it now for over 7 years. It's just been an incredible experience. The hardest part of all of this is going to be to really divest myself of all the things that I've been doing. I'm busier than I've ever been in my entire life. It's been a delightful experience. And I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for the fact that I really believe it's a calling from above. And as a result of that, I accept the post as the president has offered it, and will seek to serve not only the United States government, but also to serve the kingdom in a way that brings glory to God.
Well, whenever you need to get a message out, we've got a bureau right there in Jerusalem, right next door. And
you
the
sure
door,
do. Chris has been a friend of mine for a long time. I see him most of the times when I'm there. Your presence of CBN in Israel has been very significant, and it'll be a joy to get to see him probably a lot more regularly than I'll be living there.
All right, I hope so, and I look forward to getting your calls for prayer. It's our honor, our privilege to pray for you. Well, Governor Huckabee, thanks so much for joining with us, and may God bless you on this mission. I view it that way. You're on a mission, and you have our prayers, you have our support.
Thank you, my friend.